In the vibrant heart of Paris, Elias, a 50-year-old black man, steps through the doors of a prestigious luxury store. This place, a symbol of opulence and refinement, houses the finest jewelry creations and attracts a wealthy, influential clientele. Yet Elias, dressed in understated elegance, seems oddly out of place in the dazzling atmosphere of this world. What the employees don't know yet is that this store belongs to him. Upon his arrival, the manager, Madame Lefebvre, a middle-aged woman with a sharp gaze, observes him with barely concealed disdain. Her eyes, accustomed to scrutinizing details, linger on Elias' simple suit, quickly trying to assess his worth. The contrast between his modest appearance and the store's brilliant luxury immediately breeds skepticism. Without even a welcoming smile, she steps toward him with a confident stride, her face frozen in an expression of cold arrogance. "How can I help you?" she asks in a dry voice, her words laced with condescension. Elias, unshaken, looks at her calmly, unaffected by her icy reception. His face, serene, betrays neither anger nor frustration. "I'm here to buy a gift for a friend," he replies simply, his voice composed and polite, a stark contrast to the aggressiveness of his interlocutor. Madame Lefebvre, visibly irritated by his response, furrows her brow. Her gaze intensifies, almost accusatory, as she steps closer, her haughty expression turning openly hostile. She scrutinizes him, her eyes scanning him from top to bottom as if searching for signs confirming her feelings of superiority. Finally she sneers, "I must warn you, sir, this store caters to an exclusive clientele. You don't seem to fit the profile of our usual customers. Perhaps you should consider going elsewhere, to more suitable places." A silence fills the air. Madame Lefebvre's words hang heavily, full of prejudice. But Elias does not flinch. He holds her gaze, his eyes calm and unwavering, betraying no emotion, as if he were accustomed to such treatment. After a few seconds of reflection, he slightly nods his head, a silent gesture of courtesy that stands in stark contrast to the insult he has just received. Without another word, he turns on his heels, walking with controlled slowness toward the exit. His steps echo softly on the polished marble floor, like a note of dignity in this scene of contempt. He feels no need to justify himself or retaliate. His serenity is his armor. Behind him, Madame Lefebvre watches him, her face frozen in a mix of satisfaction and disdain. To her, he was nothing more than a simple distraction, an intruder she had successfully rid herself of. "Have a nice day," she says coldly, as if marking her territory, savoring her victory over what she sees as an unwanted intrusion. Elias steps out of the store, the sound of his footsteps faintly echoing on the pristine tiles. As soon as he crosses the threshold, he looks up at the gray, low sky of Paris, taking a deep breath of fresh air that offers a brief escape from the humiliation he has just endured. The cool morning wind sweeps gently through the streets, but it does not soothe the inner turmoil swirling inside him. Elias walks slowly along the worn cobblestones of the city, his thoughts passing in rhythm with his measured steps. The humiliation he had suffered in his own store, from the manager, Madame Lefebvre, stung sharply. She had completely ignored his identity, mistaking him for an unwanted customer, with no idea that she was addressing the man who owned the very business she worked for. There was a bitter irony in this situation, and though his calm nature prevented him from reacting with anger, he could not deny the frustration rising within him. Turning the corner of a street, he paused for a moment, observing the constant flow of passers-by moving through the typical hustle and bustle of the capital. Paris, this city of contrasts, where luxury and poverty brushed shoulders at every corner, where a man's worth was too often dictated by his appearance. Elias was well aware of this reality, having built his empire by defying expectations and breaking stereotypes. He had spent years climbing the ranks in a world that often only saw the surface, but he had always believed that true value lay in a person's strength of character, determination, and vision. It was this belief that had allowed him to succeed where so many others had failed. As he reflected on the situation, an idea began to take shape in his mind. The temptation to respond with anger or resentment was strong, but it was not in his nature. He knew that reacting in that way would bring him no good. Instead, he decided to transform this experience into a lesson. Rather than responding in kind, he would use this affront to reaffirm the core values he upheld in his business: respect, humility, and justice. Elias smiled slightly as he thought about the reaction that would arise when Madame Lefebvre and the other employees learned of his true identity. But more importantly, he knew that he could use this incident to inspire lasting change within his company. Too often, appearances guided judgments, even in the establishments he owned. He made a promise to himself that never again would anyone be made to feel devalued or rejected because of their appearance, not in his stores. Resuming his walk, his step became more confident, as if the mere act of making this decision had lightened his burden. The humiliation transformed into an opportunity, and he knew he would seize it fully. Paris continued to live around him, indifferent to this moment of inner reflection, but Elias felt more in tune with the city than ever before. He understood that true wealth did not lie in the dazzling luxury storefronts or hasty judgments, but in how one chose to respond to life's challenges and injustices. He was now heading toward his next move, ready to prove that dignity, even in moments of contempt, could be the most powerful weapon. The next morning, Elias returned to the store, this time accompanied by his lawyer, Mr. Durand, and his personal assistant, Mademoiselle Leroy. The Parisian sun bathed the streets in its soft light, but the atmosphere surrounding Elias was one of determination and gravity. He wore the same simple yet elegant suit as the day before, but today, his demeanor had changed. He stood with visible authority, his gaze steady and assured. He was no longer the calm and discreet man who had been ignored the day before, but a leader, ready to assert his rights and remind everyone of the values on which he had built his empire. As Elias stepped through the store's doors once more, he felt a sense of control. Madame Lefebvre, still behind her counter, looked up at his entrance, and a glimmer of surprise crossed her face. She clearly hadn't expected to see this man again, especially accompanied so formally. Her surprise quickly turned into slight tension, her features tightening as Elias approached. "Madame Lefebvre," he began in a calm but unwavering voice, "allow me to introduce Mr. Durand, my lawyer, and Mademoiselle Leroy, my personal assistant. Yesterday, you met me, and I think it's time to reveal who I truly am." Madame Lefebvre's face froze. A growing expression of confusion appeared on her features as her eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to understand the turn of events. "I am Elias Diop, the owner of this store." His words, simple and direct, resonated in the luxurious space, filling the silence with palpable gravity. A heavy silence fell over the room. Madame Lefebvre blinked, her breath quickening slightly. She stared at Elias as though she had trouble accepting what she had just heard. "Mr. Diop," she finally stammered, her voice betraying her bewilderment. "Yes," Elias responded calmly, his eyes locked with hers, unyielding. "And yesterday, you treated me in an unacceptable manner. This store, which you manage, was designed to be a space of respect and service for all our customers, regardless of their appearance. I am deeply disappointed by your behavior." Madame Lefebvre opened her mouth to protest, searching for words, but no sound came out. She seemed disoriented, her usual arrogance dissipated by the shocking revelation of the identity of the man she had treated with disdain. Her confidence had evaporated, leaving visible uncertainty in its wake. Elias, wasting no time, continued in a measured but unmistakable voice, "I have decided to re-evaluate your position within this company. However, before making a final decision, I will give you the opportunity to explain yourself." The manager straightened up, her face tense as she desperately tried to gather her thoughts. She was searching for words that could ease the situation, but under Elias' unwavering gaze, she realized that nothing she said would be enough. The arrogance that had characterized her the day before had vanished, replaced by palpable uncertainty. She lowered her eyes, her hands trembling slightly as she muttered awkward apologies, her voice barely audible. I am truly sorry, Mr. Diop. I had no idea. It was a mistake." Elias remained silent for a moment, listening to her words with an expression of apparent calm, but deep inside, a wave of disappointment washed over him. It wasn't just the humiliation he had felt, but the fact that this manager, who was supposed to represent his values and his business, couldn't grasp the gravity of the situation. She didn't understand that the essence of this store wasn't about material luxury, but about humanity, respect, and inclusion, principles that Elias had embraced from the very first day of building his empire. He took a slow breath, allowing the weight of his own thoughts to penetrate the heavy atmosphere of the store. Madame Lefebvre, still standing before him, seemed to sink deeper into her shame, her gaze avoiding his. The few customers in the store were discreetly observing the scene, unaware of the magnitude of what was unfolding but sensing the palpable tension emanating from it. Madame Lefebvre, Elias continued in a firm voice, breaking the heavy silence that had settled. Your behavior yesterday does not align with the spirit of this company. We have built this store on principles of inclusion, respect, and impeccable service for all. Unfortunately, your actions show that you are not in line with these values. Madame Lefebvre looked up, her pale face betraying growing fear. She knew that this moment would mark a turning point, an inevitable consequence of her mistakes. Mr. Diop, I assure you this will not happen again. Elias raised his hand gently to interrupt her, his piercing gaze leaving no room for ambiguity. I appreciate your apologies, but they are not enough. Trust is fragile, and here it has been broken. You will be demoted from your position as manager. From now on, you will be responsible for training the staff, with particular attention to customer reception and raising awareness of the values we stand for. You will report directly to me. The weight of these words fell heavily, each syllable resonating like an irrevocable sanction. Madame Lefebvre froze, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with surprise and humiliation. She knew that this demotion meant a drastic reduction in her responsibilities and influence, a harsh fall in the hierarchy. It was a hard blow, but she was aware that Elias could have gone further. He could have fired her on the spot. In his severity, he was offering her a second chance, and she was fully aware of it. I'll give you time to reflect on this decision and on how you can contribute positively to the future of this company, Elias concluded, his voice softened by a note of kindness. I hope you will seize this opportunity to learn and grow. We cannot tolerate disdain or discrimination in any form. Madame Lefebvre, still in shock, nodded, her face marked by emotion. She struggled to hold back tears, too proud to cry in front of him. Thank you, Mr. Diop. I won't disappoint you again, she stammered, her voice breaking. Elias looked at her for a moment, weighing his words. I hope so, for both you and the company. Because this second chance is a rare opportunity. But remember, it was not given lightly. Madame Lefebvre lowered her head, defeated, but in a strange mix of shame and gratitude. She realized the gravity of the situation, and also the clear warning that had just been given to her. Later, as she left the store at the end of the day, her footsteps echoed faintly on the sidewalks of Paris. The streets, still bustling and bathed in the sparkling lights of the shop windows, seemed strangely out of sync with her state of mind. With a heavy heart and a mind in turmoil, she crossed the city without paying attention to the passers-by, the cars, or the bustling cafes around her. Every moment replayed in her mind, the coldness in Elias' gaze, his cutting words, and the weight of her own responsibility in the situation. Bitterness rose within her, a metallic taste she could not erase. Madame Lefebvre knew she had made a mistake she wouldn't be able to forget any time soon. But she also wondered if she would truly be able to prove she deserved this second chance. Doubt crept into her mind, doubt she had never known before that day. Night slowly fell over Paris, but for Madame Lefebvre, this day marked a far more personal twilight, a phase of transition where her entire professional future was at stake. The weeks that followed marked a turning point in Madame Lefebvre's career. Though demoted, she decided to seize this opportunity to prove she was capable of change, both to herself and to Elias Diop. She quickly realized that her past behavior had not only jeopardized her career but had also tarnished the core values that the luxury business upheld. Now driven by a renewed determination, she dedicated herself to her new role with fresh energy and a heightened sense of responsibility. Each morning, long before the store's doors opened, she arrived early, walking through the quiet aisles, meticulously preparing training sessions. She reviewed her notes, adjusted the programs, and spent long hours reflecting on the best way to impart the principles of inclusion and respect, which had been long neglected under her management. The first days were the hardest. She could feel the whispers behind her back, the curious and sometimes skeptical glances from her colleagues. Some had greeted her change in position with barely concealed surprise, others with a hint of contempt. But Madame Lefebvre didn't let these judgments bring her down. On the contrary, she used these reactions as fuel to push herself further. Gradually, her sincere commitment began to bear fruit. The employees, initially reserved and cautious, noticed her dedication and the care she took in every detail. Madame Lefebvre didn't settle for organizing standard training sessions. She invited external experts, bringing in speakers specializing in diversity and inclusion to discuss unconscious biases, how to treat each customer with respect, and the importance of a company culture based on equality. These workshops quickly became moments of reflection and exchange. One day, during a particularly impactful session, a young employee stood up to share his experience. He recounted a situation where he had been discriminated against in a store, emphasizing how much it had affected him and shaped his approach to work. This story moved the team, and even Madame Lefebvre felt her emotions surge. She realized that, in the past, she might have unconsciously exhibited such behavior, and this realization only strengthened her resolve to do better. Over time, a new dynamic began to take shape within the team. Discussions about improving customer service became more frequent, and every member of the staff actively participated in this transformation. Training sessions, once perceived as tedious obligations, became eagerly anticipated and stimulating events. Madame Lefebvre even proposed mentoring programs, where the more experienced employees, including herself, would take the newcomers under their wing, guiding them not only in sales techniques but also in how to approach each customer with the right attitude, regardless of their appearance or social status. The spirit of community and respect grew within the store, and gradually, internal relationships improved. At the end of each month, Madame Lefebvre took the time to write a detailed report that she sent directly to Elias Diop. These reports outlined the progress made, the challenges faced, and the successes achieved. She also included her own reflections on her personal growth, expressing her renewed commitment to redeeming herself and actively contributing to the rebirth of the company. As the weeks passed, the store underwent a true transformation. Customers, initially intrigued, began to notice a marked improvement in service. They were no longer greeted by distracted faces or casual attitudes, but by a team that was warm, attentive, and resolutely focused on excellence. Compliments poured in, both on the quality of service and the atmosphere that now prevailed in the establishment. Some regular customers, who had gradually distanced themselves due to the impersonal welcome, returned with pleasure, commenting on the palpable change that made them feel valued once again. Madame Lefebvre, once seen as a distant, almost cold manager, had now become an indispensable and respected figure within the team. Her transformation, clearly visible, was not only professional but personal. She was no longer the tense and authoritarian woman, but a patient and caring mentor, dedicated to guiding her colleagues with wisdom she had gained through her past mistakes. She listened attentively to everyone's feedback and was not afraid to question herself when necessary. The employees, who had once whispered behind the scenes about her haughty attitude, now saw her as a role model. She encouraged them to voice their concerns, to be creative in welcoming customers, and, above all, to embody the values of inclusion and respect that Elias Diop cherished so deeply. Her commitment to improving human relations in the store created a collective momentum. The team was becoming more united, more motivated, and the new energy that radiated from their interactions with customers could only enrich the overall experience. Elias Diop, for his part, observed this change discreetly. He regularly visited the store, sometimes incognito, ensuring that the positive dynamic was continuing. From a distance, he noticed Madame Lefebvre's relentless involvement. When he saw her during one of her training sessions, passionately discussing the importance of respect and dignity for every customer, he could only be pleasantly surprised. He realized that not only had she corrected her mistakes, but she had also taken this mission on in a deeply personal way, marking a true rebirth. One day, after attending one of her training sessions, Elias asked to speak with Madame Lefebvre privately. She agreed, though a bit nervous, unsure of what to expect from this meeting. When the door of the office closed behind her, a subtle tension settled in. She stood upright, her hands lightly clasped in front of her, waiting for her boss's words. Madame Lefebvre, Elias began softly, clasping his hands on the desk. I've been observing your efforts over the past few weeks, and I must say, I'm truly impressed. You've taken a difficult situation, one that could have been disastrous for you, and turned it into a real opportunity for growth. Not only for yourself but also for the entire team. Madame Lefebvre felt a wave of emotion rise within her and briefly lowered her eyes to collect herself. The relief she felt was immense. For weeks, she had been pushing herself harder, wondering if her actions would be enough to regain her superior's trust. Thank you, Mr. Diop, she finally replied, her voice slightly trembling. Your trust means so much to me. I've learned through this experience that there is still so much I need to understand. I'm determined to continue on this path, to do whatever it takes to never repeat the mistakes of the past. Elias nodded, a faint smile lighting up his face. Your work hasn't gone unnoticed. You've proven that change is possible, and that's something I truly value. I want you to know that I am ready to give you a new chance. If you continue on this trajectory, I'm willing to consider restoring your position as manager, but this time with a deeper understanding of the values we uphold here. Madame Lefebvre's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of gratitude. She finally understood that true power did not lie in a title or status, but in the ability to positively influence those around us, to inspire change, and to uphold principles that go beyond mere appearances. I won't disappoint you, Mr. Diop, she declared with a more assured voice, her hands relaxing as a sense of pride began to fill her. Elias, satisfied to see that the change he had hoped for had taken place, stood up to escort her to the door. I don't doubt that, he said, offering her his hand. Keep going down this path, Madame Lefebvre. You've proven that you can not only change but also grow. And, in my opinion, that's the best quality a true leader can have. Madame Lefebvre left the office that day with a new perspective. She knew that the road to redemption was long, but she was ready to walk it with determination, bolstered by the support of her son and the renewed trust of her boss. Over time, she became not only a better professional but also a better person, and her journey became an inspiration to those working alongside her. One day, a few months after her demotion, Elias decided to visit the store incognito to see for himself the impact of Madame Lefebvre's efforts. Dressed discreetly, he entered the store and was immediately struck by the warm atmosphere. The employees were smiling, attentive, and every customer, without exception, was treated with respect and courtesy. He observed Madame Lefebvre from a distance. She was overseeing a training session with some new employees, her face radiating calmness and kindness. She spoke passionately about the importance of inclusion and respect, concepts she now fully embodied. Elias was impressed. He approached her once the session was finished. Madame Lefebvre, he said, revealing himself, I can see that you've turned this challenge into an opportunity for growth. Your commitment to the values of our company is remarkable. Madame Lefebvre, surprised to see him, smiled shyly. Mr. Diop, I thank you for the second chance you gave me. I've understood the importance of the values you advocate, and I've done my best to integrate them into every aspect of my work. Elias nodded, satisfied. Your work hasn't gone unnoticed. You've proven your ability to evolve, and that's exactly what I was looking for. That's why I've made a decision. I would like to offer you a higher position in our company. Madame Lefebvre's eyes widened in surprise. A higher position, Mr. Diop? Yes, he replied with a smile. I want you to oversee all training and development operations at a national level. Your mission will be to instill the values of inclusion and respect across all our stores throughout the country. You've proven you're capable of this, and I believe you can do even more for our company. Madame Lefebvre felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This position represented much more than just a promotion. It was the recognition of her efforts and a fresh start, an opportunity to continue evolving and learning. Thank you, Mr. Diop, she murmured, her voice trembling. I will do everything in my power to live up to this new responsibility. Elias gave her an encouraging smile. I have no doubt about that, Madame Lefebvre. You've come a long way since our first meeting, and I'm proud to see the leader you've become. Let's continue building a company where everyone feels respected and valued, no matter who they are." Madame Lefebvre nodded, determined to take on this new challenge. She knew the position would be demanding, but she was ready to pour her heart into this new mission. Through this experience, she had not only gained wisdom and humility, but she had also found a new passion for talent development and inclusion. This chapter of her life marked a new beginning, not just for her, but for the company she had committed herself to serve wholeheartedly. This story invites us to reflect on our own behavior and reminds us that the greatness of a person is not measured by their appearance, but by how they treat others, with dignity and respect. Elias Diop and Madame Lefebvre leave us with a powerful message. It is never too late to learn, evolve, and embrace the values that make us better human beings.